I was actually born on a military base, and my father was still serving in the military at the time. And at a place that'd be familiar with a lot of viewers of this would be Fort Meade, Maryland, which is where the National Security Agency is, of all things these days. And as a young child, my father was transferred to his final assignment, which was Oberammergau, Germany, down south of Munich in a community called Bad Tolz. And for the next couple of years, I learned how to, as a kid in the military or as a child of a military family. At that time, we had 6. I was the youngest at that time. My sister Mary was born in Germany, and we spent 3 years there. I learned how to, ski on the back hills of the mountains of southern Germany, which was pretty cool as a young kid. My father was a sergeant first class at the time, and he was an instructor at a non-commissioned officers academy. So we were a very tight-knit family. And then when we moved back to the United States, we moved back to the community that my parents were from, which was a small community in the state of Rhode Island. My parents had 2 more children, so we ended up with 9 total. And my father retired from the military and went to work as a teller in a bank. And my mom stayed at home, obviously with the tribe or the clan that we had. And we both basically at that point in time grew up in the town of Middletown, Rhode Island, which is part of Newport County. And most people know Rhode Island. You say Newport. Most people know that, but we kept sort of very humble origins. We had my father was a very tough guy. His lesson in life that I always tell people is he taught us the golden rule, which is to treat others like you want to be treated. Maintain your humility. Don't ever think you're too big of a shot. If you want to get ahead in life, you got to work hard. But back to the golden rule, always treat people like you want to be treated, right? Decently, dignified, and all that. The other side of our family was my mom, which she's really a main character, like most moms are, I think, in big families. She was a lifelong learner, and you could do a whole story on her. But my mom was somebody who was a very, very sharp, right up until the day that she died, woman who grew up in her own sort of with her own military background. Her father was a retired naval officer. He spent 40 years. He started out as a seaman, fought in World War I. He then again stayed in the Navy for the length of time, fought in World War II. He fought in the Korean War, and he ended up with just over 40 years in the Navy. And so her thing with us was get an education. And the education might have been the School of Hard Knocks on where we lived. Go down to the Boys Club. I spent an awful lot of time at a place called the Newport Boys Club where I learned how to play pool, and I learned how to box, and I learned how to swim. And so the other aspect of that was the education side. My mother was like one of these people, when you came home, you were not going to do anything until you did your homework. And she showed us by example, and as our lives went on and we all were growing up in sort of a very, it was a tough family, tough Irish family. We had a lot of fun, got into a lot of trouble, did some things that, I always say I don't regret anything I've done. I've enjoyed it all. I mean, it doesn't mean that my parents necessarily wanted to, deal with all the stuff that we got involved in, but my mom was somebody who, after raising all of us, she then went and got two degrees, and then she pursued a law degree, and she finally graduated from law school at the age of 69 years old, because it was something that she wanted to do. But she was also proving to us that she could lead by example in her own life, because she'd always say, no matter what you get, if you get that education, you can put it in your back pocket and never use it again, but it's there. And it'll help you in life as you go down the road when you decide to do something with yourself, right? And in both cases, both parents, we would never get away with it these days with children, our kids these days. Both parents would kick us in the rear end and throw us out the door and tell us, go do something, right? Whether you were a kid, and in my case, all of us, all my brothers particularly, my oldest brother Bill kind of led the way, my brother Jack, myself, and my brother Charlie, who's still serving in the military. I mean, we had paper routes as young kids. I remember, you go up knocking on somebody's door asking them, they got to pay because they haven't paid in 2 weeks, and somebody throws something at you. But we delivered a lot of newspapers, and my father, working his way in the bank, where he like I said, he started out as a teller, and he worked his way up to the repossession guy, which was always a fun experience. We would go out, and I would sit in the car sometimes and watch when he had to repossess a vehicle, and then he ended up moving up as a manager, and then he finished up with the bank after, I don't know, 16, 18 years, and he had a massive heart attack, and he survived that, and he went on, and then he subsequently died of that. But I would just say that in our family, you pulled your weight. We have great stories, like the story of the sock basket. I mean, if you wanted to, my mother never bothered to. She never would put our sock. Like you get some families, you get your socks neatly folded and they're put away like we would teach soldiers to do in a barracks. My mother would, because there was so many of us, so she just got a basket, and any sock. You find like one sock because a washing machine eats socks. So my mother would find socks all the time. And she just got into the habit of throwing them into a basket. So if you wanted a pair of socks, if you wanted to wear socks, I have one sister, Barbara, who doesn't bother to wear socks. She doesn't even wear shoes, and never did. Doesn't matter what the temperature is outside, or if she's walking on, a hot tar. But and I think it's because of the sock basket. She always wanted to wear a pair that actually matched, and you could never do that if you lived in the Flynn's house. So the sock basket, and that's sort of a funny story about us growing up there. But we would go out and do things. I mean, we lived near the ocean in Middletown, Rhode Island. So if you look at where it's at, somebody Googles it, they can find it. And I don't even remember how old I was. I was probably 5 or 6 years old when we really first moved back there, that I can remember. And my mother would allow us to go down to the beach and jump in the ocean. That's where. So a lot of us we all grew up surfing, and in the surfing community there, and people go surfing in Rhode Island. It's probably some of the best surf on the East Coast. So anybody that's ever done any real surfing, they know that there's some great places to surf there. And we'd be out there, 6, 7, 8 years old, because I was a really strong swimmer, as well as some of my other brothers and sisters. We'd be out there surfing in 6 to 8 foot surf. And, and you would go, "Where's your kids at?" Well, they're over at Ruggles Avenue, surfing around the corner, and you'd be like, "What are you, crazy?" You'd be charged with child abuse these days, right? So in our house, it was like, nope, get out there and go do something.